What's up, guys? Not doing an NBA overview today, but instead, we're going to talk about the history of superstars being traded and forcing trades in the league. Now, you might think, James Harden, he's like, and Kyrie back in 2017 when he wanted to leave the Cavs. That's like the first time superstars wanted to be traded from their teams. It's a fairly recent thing. Young guys, they just hate playing with their teams. They don't want to ride it out. They want to leave. Nah, man, this has been going on for a long time. Like, I'm talking 50 years back. 50 years ago, players trying to leave their teams because they were unhappy, forcing trades and stuff like that. So before I get into it, gotta hit that subscribe button, that like button for me, the notification bell. It helps me out a lot, and I'd really appreciate it. Now that all that YouTube stuff is done, let's get into the video. Now, the first famous trade we can talk about was on July 9th, 1968, when the Philadelphia 76ers traded Wilt Chamberlain to the Los Angeles Lakers for Darrell Imhoff, Archie Clark, and Jerry Chambers, plus some cash that is undisclosed. Now, Wilt basically was like, I'm unhappy. I want out. Let's get out of here. Trade me. As superstars do now. They just say, trade me, get me out of here. I'm unhappy. I don't want to play. The Sixers had lost to the Celtics a bunch of times, 6 straight times to the Celtics in the finals. Wilt was their leading scorer, most dominant player, and he just was tired of losing, and they had just got rid of their coach, and he was basically like, trade me. I need to go somewhere where I can win and also be the best player. So he would end up on the Lakers with their big three of Chamberlain, Jerry West, and Elgin Baylor. In the 5 years that Chamberlain was with the Lakers, they went to the finals 4 times while only winning one of the titles, but they still went 4 times, something the Sixers just couldn't do. So that was like the first famous trade that we're going to talk about, and let's get into the second one. I'm sure you guys know about it. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar wanted to be traded from the Milwaukee Bucks to either the New York Knicks at the time or the Los Angeles Lakers. He was tired of being in Milwaukee. He was like, get me out. This city is too small. He wanted to be in a huge metropolitan city. He was like, Lakers or New York. And we all know where he would end up. On June 16th, 1975, the Los Angeles Lakers acquired Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Walt Wesley from the Milwaukee Bucks in exchange for Elmore Smith, Brian Winters, and Junior Bridgman, and Dave Myers. And we all know how that ended up for Kareem. He ended up winning 5 titles and going down as one of the greatest players of all time. And those are just the first 2 huge examples of stars basically forcing their way out of a situation they didn't like. Going into the next situation, probably the third most famous situation from this time period, Julius Erving, is the star. The NBA and the ABA are about to merge. Julius Erving is on the Nets, and he's upset. He's upset that Nate Archibald is making more money than he is. And he basically sat out a bunch of regular season games that were going to be televised, and it just didn't happen because he decided to sit out. And on October 20th, they made the trade, sending Julius Erving to the Philadelphia 76ers for cash. $2.5 million in cash, to be exact. Now, these are 3 huge examples of stars from this era just wanting to be traded. And it would just go on and on and on and on from here. Next, we're going to talk about Bill Walton, and he was unhappy on the Blazers. He basically forced his way out in a trade to the Clippers, where he was sent for Kevin Kerner, Kermit Washington, and a first-round pick, where the Clippers got Bill Walton. Now, he would eventually end up on the Celtics a couple years later, where he was also unhappy and got sent there. But we're not going to talk about that. This is his first situation of him being unhappy on the Blazers and him moving along to the Los Angeles Clippers. After this, we have to talk about Moses Malone and how he forced his way out of Houston. He's unhappy, same situation. He forces his way to Philadelphia. He was just the MVP, and the Rockets traded him to the Philadelphia 76ers for Caldwell Jones, a basically outdated player, and a first-round pick. And the Sixers got away with it. They got the reigning league MVP, tied him up with Julius Erving, and the next year they would go on to win their last championship that they have won in 1983. Now we have to talk about a trade that kind of did the Sixers dirty in this right. Charles Barkley, unhappy on the Sixers, wants out. Same story. He goes to the Suns in 1992 for Jeff Hornacek, Andrew Lang, and Tim Perry. Basically nothing. And he ends up on the Suns where they go to the chip, but eventually lose to Michael Jordan, and we all see the line, God wanted us to win the world championship. They lose because Michael Jordan is Michael Jordan, and you're not going to win against him in the finals. But he forced his way out of Philly, and he ended up on the Suns. Now, around this time, Hakeem Olajuwon, who's on the Rockets at this time, he wants out. They're not winning, and the Houston Rockets are basically like, no, we're not going to trade you. We kind of need you. That you're our franchise centerpiece. Can't do anything without you. We're not going to trade you. They ride it out with Hakeem, and a couple of years later, back-to-back championships and an MVP for Hakeem Olajuwon. They win 2 championships by sticking it out with Hakeem Olajuwon. Now, that's the situation of where a star wanted out, didn't get his way, and ended up with a championship. And that happened a couple more times in history, but not really that often. The star usually either gets out or they just don't really win. Now we kind of get into an era in the 90s of where this was happening like a lot. So I'm just going to kind of speed run through these. 1995, Alonzo Mourning wanted out from the Hornets. He goes to the Heat along with Leron Ellis and Pete Myers. The Hornets got Matt Greiger, Khaled Reeves, Glenn Rice, and a first-round pick. In 1995, Dennis Rodman got traded from the Spurs. The Bulls got him, and the Spurs got Will Perdue. In 1996, Jason Kidd got traded from the Mavericks. The Suns got Jason Kidd, Tony Dumas, Lauren Meyer. The Mavs received Sam Cassell, Michael Finley, AC Green, and a second-round pick. In 1996, Tim Hardaway is unhappy. He forces his way out of the Warriors. He ends up on the Heat, where they get Tim Hardaway and Chris Gatling. The Warriors got Bimbo Coles and Kevin Willis. In 1997, Shawn Kemp is unhappy. He wants his way out of Seattle. There's a 3-team deal where the Cavs get Shawn Kemp and Sherman Douglas. The Sonics get Vin Baker, and the Bucks get Terrell Brandon, Tyronn Hill, and a first-round pick. In 1999, Latrell Sprewell is unhappy. He gets traded from the Warriors to the Knicks, where the Warriors get Terry Cummings and Chris Mills, and the Knicks, of course, got Latrell Sprewell. Also, in 1999, the Steve Francis trade, where he ends up on the Rockets with Tony Massenberg, Don McLean, and a first-round pick. Also with the Grizzlies getting Anthony Carr, Michael Dickerson, and a bunch of picks and no-name players. And the Magic basically get rocked and get a bunch of no-name players. And that's about it for the 90s speed run, where all these players that I just listed were unhappy and forced their way out. Now, we don't really remember that, but again, like I said, this has been going on for 50 years, starting with Wilt Chamberlain wanting a trade out of Philadelphia to the Lakers. It's not just James Harden. It's not just Kyrie Irving. It's not all these new players who can't win in a spot. Free agents also left their teams in the 90s, but that's not this video, and we're not going to get into that. It's been going on for a long time, and I'm not even done yet. In 2004, Shaq and Kobe can't coexist. Shaq, you know what happens, gets traded to the Heat for a bunch of no-name players, Lamar Odom, first-round pick, second-round pick, Caron Butler, and who wins that trade? The Heat. They get the best player in the trade, Shaquille O'Neal, and they win a championship largely on the back of Dwayne Wade, but they wouldn't have won it without Shaq. In 2006. In 2005, Baron Davis, who is a good player on the Hornets, hasn't really accomplished much, but a good player nonetheless, forces his way out of the New Orleans Hornets, and the Hornets get Speedy Claxton and Dale Davis, and the Warriors get Baron Davis. Of course, who wins that trade? Now, in 2004, the Raptors are unhappy, and so is Vince Carter. Vince Carter wants out from the Raptors. He forces his way out for an aging Alonzo Mourning, Aaron Williams, Eric Davis, and 2 first-round picks. And Vince Carter ends up on the Nets, where he ends up averaging 27 points per game. And, the Nets win that trade as well. Moving on to 2004, where his cousin, Tracy McGrady, is unhappy on the Magic. They're not winning. He forces his way out to the Rockets, along with Reece Gaines, Juwan Howard, and Tyronn Lue. The Magic got Kelvin Cato, Steve Francis, and Cuttino Mobley. In 2004, Rasheed Wallace also wants out from the Blazers. The Blazers get Sharif Abdul-Rahim, Dan Dickau, and Theo Ratliff. And the Atlanta Hawks get Rasheed Wallace and Wesley Pearson. In 2008, this is basically the last trade of that decade/era, whatever you want to call it. Jason Kidd, and aging Jason Kidd, is unhappy after losing, a bunch of championships on the Nets and not getting there. After that, he goes to the Mavericks, and the Nets get a bunch of no-name players. Now, we're going to move on to the past decade, where NBA players start leaving their teams, and this is all the recent stuff that pretty much everybody knows, or recent NBA fans know as of now. We all know Carmelo Anthony forced his way out a couple months before. He could have just went to the Knicks, but decided to force his way out to the Knicks for the money. He gets traded to the Knicks in a 3-team deal with the Nuggets and the T-Wolves. In 2011, Chris Paul is on the Hornets that are owned by the NBA at the time, and he thinks he's going to the Lakers. Everyone thinks he's going to the Lakers. The Lakers think Chris Paul is coming to them, and David Stern basically says no, and the Clippers pick up Chris Paul and a 2nd-round pick and cash considerations. In 2012, Dwight Howard is on the Magic. He says he wants out. He finds his way in LA with Kobe Bryant. We all know how that worked out in a 4-team deal with the Lakers, Magic, Sixers, and the Nuggets, where the Nuggets ended up with Andre Iguodala from the Sixers, and the Sixers made the worst decision of their life, picking up Andrew Bynum. In 2014, Kevin Love is a superstar on the Minnesota Timberwolves. LeBron just found his way in Cleveland, and that basically opened up the doors, along with Cleveland getting the first pick in the draft that year, for Kevin Love to come to the Cavs, and in exchange for that 1st-round pick to the T-Wolves and a bunch of players. And the Sixers are also involved in this one, where they get a bunch of no-name players. And now we're getting really, really recent. Chris Paul wants to trade out of LA. He ends up on the Rockets, and the Clippers basically get a bunch of good players, including Patrick Beverley, Sam Dekker, Montrezl Harrell, Lou Williams, 1st-round pick, and cash, all for Chris Paul, who ended up on the Rockets in 2017. Now, this is the one that we definitely all know about. Kyrie is unhappy for some reason, playing with the greatest player of our generation, LeBron James. I don't know why Kyrie did this, but he's crazy, but it's okay. Kyrie wants a trade out of Cleveland. He finds his way in Boston, where the Cavs basically get screwed. I don't know if they have any of these players anymore. Jay Crowder, Isaiah Thomas, Ante Zizic, a 1st-round pick, and a 2nd-round pick. Also in 2017, Paul George is like, I want out of Indy. Indiana is forced to trade him to the Oklahoma City Thunder, where the Pacers got Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis. In 2017, also Jimmy Butler is unhappy. He wants out of the Bulls and finds his way in Minnesota, along with Justin Patton. And the Bulls got Chris Dunn, Zach LaVine, and Lauri Markkanen. And in 2018, Kawhi Leonard is unhappy with the Spurs organization and the way they handled his trade with Greg Popovich and their system and all of that. He finds his way on the Raptors, where he would end up winning a championship along with Danny Green. And the Spurs got DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, and a 1st-round pick. And Jimmy Butler is unhappy again. He wants out of Minnesota because, he thinks the team is soft. And he ends up on the Sixers for half a year, where they also got Justin Patton, and the T-Wolves got Jared Bayless, Robert Covington, Dario Saric in the second round pick. And in 2019, Anthony Davis signs a contract with New Orleans, but he's unhappy 2.5 years later, wants his way out. He wants to go to LA, finds his way in LA, wins a championship. The Pelicans would get a bunch of players, and the Wizards were also involved in that deal. And now we're going to get to our two most recent trades. Paul George finds out, Kawhi's going to the Clippers. I want to go to the Clippers too. He gets out of the Thunder after saying he's going to stay with the Thunder and leaves for Danilo Gallinari, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and 7 first-round picks. Count it, 7 first-round picks. 7 first-round picks for Paul George. The same Paul George who hit the backboard in the playoffs from the corner last year. And our last trade, the Rockets are going to acquire Russell Westbrook because he finds out Paul George is leaving and is like, why would I stay here? It's time for me to move on. He moves on to the Rockets, where the Thunder got Chris Paul and count it, 4 more first round picks. 4 more. And the last guy we have to talk about who hasn't been traded yet is James Harden, who currently wants a trade out of the Rockets. And that's basically it. It's been a lot, I think a lot more now, but this isn't anything new. Stars have always wanted to be traded out of situations they don't like, whether it's the city, whether it's they're not winning, whether it's they're not getting the ball. The egos haven't changed in the NBA in 50 years. It's just social media and it's more prominent now. But NBA stars have always wanted out. And I guess you can see that now that I broke it down for you guys. And that's going to end the video. Like I said, if you guys can like, comment, subscribe, that really helps me out a lot. I know the channel's still kind of new, but if you see this and you enjoyed it, I make daily NBA content every single day. And if you don't mind recommending to a friend, that would also be great so they can like, comment, and subscribe. You know the deal. Stay cool, stay safe. Have a good one.